I decided to take a look at how some of the biggest pharmaceutical companies are spending their money on artificial intelligence. And I did that. I decided to look at their annual reports. And if you open these annual reports, you will notice a big shift, a massive shift in where these companies are actually spending money and where the money is actually going. For example, the traditional laboratory bench, you can see that it's rapidly losing ground to more high powered data centers. So this is interesting. And the numbers are pretty wild. It's insane. In 2025 alone, the global spending on AI in pharma topped $1.97 billion. And that was just in 2025. So you shouldn't be surprised to know that, what is it? We are halfway through 2026 and we are already on track to hit a run rate of $2.5 billion a year. Household names like, obviously, like Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Novartis, they are leading the charge in this AI spending movement, if you will. In fact, every single one of the top 10 leading global pharma giants, they have locked in multi-year contract with AI drug discovery startups. And it shouldn't be any surprise at this point because AI is truly the future. And if AI is truly the future, you want to be in early. So, because of this, it's clear this isn't just a pilot program or a trendy experiment anymore. It's a complete infrastructure overall in these big companies. But where's all that cash actually going? That's what piqued my curiosity. Where's all that money going? Is it just vanishing into the usual cloud tech hype as we know it, or is it actually fundamentally changing the business? To understand the real strategy behind these massive bets, we have to look past the industry averages and focus on a single, most, I guess you can say that probably like the most aggressive spender in the game right now. And it shouldn't be no surprise to you that it's obviously Eli Lilly and Company. And to really follow how the spending is going in AI, we have to follow the hardware, right? So to truly find the truth about Eli Lilly's AI strategy, you have to look past the glossy marketing slides and you have to focus directly on what they are buying, what are they spending their money on. For years, right? We've noticed like for years, drug companies treated AI like a software subscription, and essentially they would pay a monthly fee to use someone else's tool. However, Eli Lilly, they decided to completely flip that script. So instead of renting the software, they decided, you know what? Let's just buy and build our own tech from the bottom, from the ground up, right? They decided to build the whole thing themselves. So I'm going to talk about why this is important in a little bit, but first let's take a look at let's talk about some of the announcement that they had in the past year. Last year, Lilly announced they were they're deploying what they called the industry's most powerful AI supercomputer. What is that? You'll find out in a little bit. So, specifically, instead of relying on the standard cloud system, they bought a massive, I think it was like 1,000 plus GPU NVIDIA DGX SuperPod computer network. So they just bought it outright, just like that. Now, the question you might be asking yourself, why buy the physical hardware outright? Why is that even, why even bother? Well, if you are in the sector, if you're in the space, you can kind of guess why. And it all comes down to data security. Is their way of protecting the data. For instance, there was this recent survey that showed that over half of pharma financial leaders prioritize automation to speed up their drug pipeline. Although they prioritize automation, their absolute biggest fear is having the data being leaked into the public, data leakage. So security is very important to these leaders. So therefore, by building an on-premise supercomputer, by building their own supercomputer in-house, Lilly, they successfully pulled their AI capabilities behind their own corporate firewall. What does this mean? Well, this means that they can process sensitive genomic data and things like private molecular libraries without ever exposing their secrets to the public cloud. So it's all done in-house. So that their data is not gonna ever see the public cloud. And that's important for security for data security. Now, I kind of want to double down on a partnership and this partnership with between Eli Lilly and Nvidia. And in this partnership, they launched this AI, this co-innovation AI lab. And what really caught Wall Street's attention was the scale of this partnership, the financial scale of this deal. Together, they committed, get this, $1 billion over 5 years, and this $1 billion is dedicated to AI infrastructure as well as specialized tech talent. Consequently, you can say that Lilly is turning silicon into their main engine for drug discovery. But, how exactly do these massive deals work on paper, right? Because you have to report that in your financial statements. How does that work on paper? If you look at Eli Lilly's official filings with the SEC, the language, the language changes from exciting press releases to more cold financial realities. For example, in their recent financial report, Lilly openly admitted that there is no guarantee that they or Nvidia will actually see the expected benefits of this new lab, the co-innovation AI lab, which is honestly, I think is the right thing to say, right? You can say that like it's 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 nice to be upfront that this may result in drugs that we that changes the industry. But at the same time, there's a small chance that it may not, you know this will we may not see the actual benefits that we expect from this new lab. So how do they protect their financial shit, right? Knowing that this may or may not work. How do they protect their financial shit? Here's what they do. They did. To manage this risk, Lilly has pioneered a hedged financial model. And I'll tell you what that is. Okay. For instance, they avoid buying AI startups outright at overinflated prices. So instead, this is what they are doing. They give companies a relatively small amount of upfront cash. They're like, okay, we're gonna give you some cash upfront and pair it with massive performance-based milestone payments, and they call this bio bucks, right? So they give these AI startup companies a huge chunk of money upfront, and then they say, you know what, if you reach these specific milestones, if you deliver at these specific dates, this specific product, we'll give you this amount of money. And this is a very strategic way of going about spending their money. Now we can tell you what. Let's take a look at some of these companies that Eli Lilly have partnered up with recently, and I think we can take a look. Let's do that. So one of the biggest deal was with this company called Ensilico Medicine, and this was a major deal. It was a $2.75 billion deal. Now, if you check out the headline, this is huge, right? The figure is a big number. The actual upfront cash layout is only a fraction of that total. They don't get like the 2.75 billion upfront. No, they get a fraction of that. In other words, the rest of the money is unlocked, right? They get access to that money only if the AI successfully predicts viable molecules that actually pass human clinical trials. So the molecule has to make it all the way through and pass human clinical trials in order to have access to this big lump sum of money, the full thing. Now, this is interesting. Thus, Lilly is using the historic profits. This is very smart. They are using the historic profits from their current blockbuster hit drugs to buy options on tomorrow's AI discoveries without risking its future financial health, which is really, which is very smart. It's one way to stay ahead of what's coming, or honestly, what's already here. So, to me, this brings up a vital question. Exactly what kind of science is this money buying, right? You're spending $2.5 billion. Where is that money going? What is it buying you? So, to truly understand Lilly's strategy, you have to take a look at how their partnerships have evolved with these companies. They started with basic tech and have systematically moved toward the absolute frontier biology. What does that mean? Well, in the beginning, early deals they focused on small molecules, and that was in the beginning, right? And they would use machine learning to predict how a basic chemical compound would bind to target proteins. But small molecules, they are low hanging fruit, right? They are low hanging fruit drug design. They are not that complicated. Yeah, it's easy. I don't want to say easy, but they are low hanging fruit. So recently, Lilly, they shift their focus towards more complex biologics, right? Not just small molecules. Let's focus on more complex biologics. They have a partnership with this company called Shy. I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing it right. The company is like Shy Discovery, and this partnership represents a whole new level of computing. For example, Shy builds an AI, or they build AI models, many of them, and these models they are designed to predict protein folding, which is very important for drug discovery. And this means that, okay, what does this mean? This means that having the ability to predict how proteins folds, instead of testing million of existing chemicals in a physical lab, Lilly's team used AI to generate entirely new antibody sequences on a computer. So you don't have to go through and do all sorts of iteration, all sorts of modification. They can outright, you can say print out new antibody sequences on a computer. As a result, this is what happens. These sequences are highly optimized before anyone ever touches a real test tube. So you don't even have to test any test tube to know that these sequences are optimized. They are ready to go. An even more cutting edge example is their work with another company called Fluent. And this company named Fluent, is using deep AI networks to design custom gene editing enzymes. So they are leveraging deep AI to come up with gene editing enzymes. Well, what's that? Like, what's there? Well, I'm glad you asked. Um, the old way that people would do things, scientists would do things, that they would have to search through nature to find wild type enzyme, right? To find one that's already in nature, and then they would spend years to manually mutate this enzyme that they found, and they would hope that these changes that they would make to this enzyme, that they would make to this protein, would improve that protein, right? Make it better. And Profluent, this AI company, again, leveraging deep AI, they basically treat protein design the way that we treat a tool like ChatGPT. That like ChatGPT treat text, right? You put a text and then it outputs a response for you. That company, they are doing something very similar. So all you have to do, you just typed in the exact specifications you need about an enzyme. Say, for example, you want high accuracy and you also want low toxicity. You put in that information, and the AI generates a completely new protein sequence that has never been seen in nature, that has never existed in nature. It's all from the models, all from their deep learning way of doing things. Essentially, Lilly, you can say that they are, you know, Lilly, they are funding the computer design, and then they are using their massive physical lab to test and to manufacture the AI's creations. This is a very cool partnership. On the one hand you have these AI companies like Profluent that are coming up with these new enzymes, and then you have Lilly's existing infrastructure to not only test these enzymes but to also manufacture whatever that the AI come up with. It is it is I want to say like very efficient way of going about doing things. But with all that money moving around, what is actually the return on investment? Is it really worth it? Like, I mean, we can hear people talk about bubbles all the time, and you have other people spending so much money on AI infrastructure. Are we really seeing the benefit from all this money? And so the best way to do that is to look at, well, let's put it this way. If you measure the return on investment by the number of AI designed drugs, drugs that are derived from AI, and the drugs that are currently sitting on pharmaceutical shelves, the return right now is practically none. It's zero, because there are no, that's not happening. Like, at least not now. And this is because, before I get some, bad rep for this. This is because the drug development process is inherently very slow. It's very slow. And it's not only slow, but it's also highly regulated. And that's for good cause, quite frankly. So, a molecule discovered by a supercomputer in 2026 has to go through years of human trials to prove that not only that this new molecule is safe, but it is also effective. So, do I think that we will see drugs come? Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the hope. Well, I hope. I want to say I hope. Now, if you there are other ways to look at return on investment, right? Like some of the early signs for return on investment, we can see that um, it's I guess you can look at three key areas. One of them is the time that it takes to develop drugs, and the other one is how clinical trials are being designed, and the third one, which is very, very important, is the ability to treat diseases that were previously untreatable. Let's talk a little bit about the time, faster development time for drugs. Moving a drug from a basic idea to a real candidate, traditionally, something like that would take, I want to say, 3 to 5 years, right? Of being in the laboratory and going through trial and error. By using these new supercomputers, these new capabilities, these AI capabilities, Lilly is compressing that initial phase down to less than 12 months. So you are going from like upwards up to like upwards of like 5 years, and you shrink that time down to 12 months. To me, that's a big return on investment. Now, if you think about smarter clinical trials, Lilly is also using machine learning to analyze, massive amounts of historical data. So they are going back and looking at, this massive historical data, and consequently, this is important, right? It's letting them predict which patients, right, what population are most likely to respond well to a drug before the trial even begins. Because a lot of the time, a drug might work for a particular population, but not so well for another population. And so, because they have a huge data set, they have this AI capability. They can mine this data to see, okay, and be able to predict which patients is going to react well to their drugs even before the trial even starts, right? So this is big. Now, the third one, which I think is also amazing, is the idea that now with by leveraging AI, you can treat diseases that were previously not treatable, quite frankly. And furthermore, well, what's the best way to put this? They are able to target complex genetic disorders that previously were considered completely untreatable by standard medicine, by small molecule, for example. Anyways, this is amazing just to see how these partnerships are happening, and also kind of like the early signs of return on investment for this big amount of money that's being spent. And as Eli Lilly's chairman and CEO David Wicks noted, the company is anticipating, it's participating in one of the most important innovation cycles in pharmaceutical history, and it's a fundamental breakthrough that could completely shift uh, how we fight human diseases. And it's no it's a no-brainer for them to be all in on these new AI capabilities. Therefore, their financial strategy is clear to me. They are taking the massive profits from their current hit products, and they are using these profits to secure a dominant position in the next era of medicine. It's very smart. Take some of the profit now and put it into AI, which is going to feed the next era of medicine. Very brilliant. Ultimately, they are betting, I want to say, hundreds of millions in upfront cash and billions in future milestones on a single theory. And it's this: the future leaders of medicine will not be the companies with the biggest physical labs, but the companies with the most, the most powerful computers. So, the tech revolution is in medicine isn't coming, it's not coming. It's already running on an internal supercomputer at Eli Lilly, and I'm sure at these other big companies.